Hey, what's up everybody? Thanks for checking out the Aaron Advantage. I was reading an article recently about some crazy stories from the wild world of real estate, and I thought I would share some of these with you. We've all heard how hot the market is, and that can lead to some funny stories. So let's dive in. This story comes from an agent in Chicago, and we all know Chicago is known for some crazy stories. So the market is super hot right now. Most properties are going over asking price, and they're getting multiple offers. Well, this guy actually was representing an accountant, and the accountant said, hey, I want to actually make an offer significantly above asking price, and I want to make a cash offer on the home. This agent said, hey, honestly, I don't know that that's going to be a price that we can actually get for this home. I think the appraiser is going to come in and they're not going to be able to make this happen. And there's no way we're going to be able to get this deal done at this price. And the guy goes, I don't really care. I just want to tie it up in contract and then we can negotiate it out further down the line. That's really not something that you can do. This agent said, hey, I'm not willing to represent you in a bad faith offer. If you're just trying to tie up a contract just to get it into a position where you can then try to cut the price later on, that's not something you should be doing. Turns out this guy actually had no intention of closing on the property at that price or doing anything else, and he honestly wasn't that good of a guy in his professional life either. This agent goes on to find out and say that that guy never ended up buying the house. They hired another agent who didn't get them in the property, and he went to jail for defrauding his accountant clients and stealing money from them every year when he was doing their taxes. So definitely a lot of crazy stuff that can happen in this industry. This guy talks about an escalation clause. How wild is that? Never heard of those before. This next story comes from a buyer's agent in central New Jersey. He's working with a lot of buyers right now who are often frustrated by the fact that there's just not a whole lot to find in the marketplace. We're all feeling that pain when we're working with buyers. He's got buyers who are thinking way outside the box and coming up with some creative ideas on things they can do to get their offer accepted, like offer to rent the property back to the seller after closing so they have an opportunity to find something else. Now in our area, that's not that uncommon for the seller to retain possession after closing, but in some areas, that is something that is completely unheard of, so that's a great idea. They've also got buyers who are offering to pay the closing costs on behalf of the seller, as well as any transfer taxes if they have those in their state. He also talks about the fact that they are offering to pay moving fees and all kinds of other things to make sure that their offer stands out amongst the crowd, especially in markets where prices are increasing way too fast and the houses may not be appraising. These are different things that you might consider if you're thinking about buying a home and want your offer to stand out. This next story comes from an agent selling his own personal home in Texas. They were building a new house, so they wanted to make sure they could time it out to get their old home sold, move into the new one, and get the best price they possibly could for the house that they were leaving. Well, it worked out a lot better than he even anticipated, even as a real estate agent knowing what the market looks like. Within 2 days, they got 30 offers on the property. It sold for $36,000 over what they were asking for the house, and the buyer was willing to put $20,000 down in earnest money to make sure their offer got accepted. This is not as uncommon as it may seem. These kinds of things are happening all the time. This next story comes from a real estate agent in Valparaiso, Indiana. He's got a lot of different things that he talks about in here, but the one that stood out to me is the fact that when utilizing what's called a listed coming soon status in the MLS, he's starting to see people show up by mistake the day before the property goes on the market. This is absolutely something that I've heard about happening in other places before, and it's probably not the best thing to do. Listed coming soon statuses are an opportunity for people to put their house on the market without it being publicized to the public in general. That allows you an opportunity to get with your agent, an opportunity to get with you, to set up a time to make sure that you have a chance to get in and take a look at the house. But showing up unannounced and knocking on the door is definitely not a good idea. Now this is one of the kind of stories that's just completely insane, especially living here in the Midwest where prices are, maybe going up 10% or so. This guy wrote an offer on a house in Los Angeles that was priced at $2.2 million. He wrote it all cash, $100,000 over asking price with no appraisal contingencies, ready to close in 21 days. The seller responded by saying, hey buddy, we've already got 20 offers, nothing under $2.4 million will even be considered at this point. The final counter was $250,000 over asking price, above the $2.4 million mark where they wanted to be, and he still didn't get it. This is not the first time I've heard a story like this. So if you think you're in a tough situation looking at houses in our area and maybe getting outbid when you're putting $10,000 over the asking price, realize that we've got it a lot better than some places. This next story comes from Westchester County in New York. This agent was called out to list a property that had cameras in it, everywhere, in every room, including the bathrooms. And the sellers absolutely would not turn them off during any showings. Now in New York, they have to disclose to everybody that goes in that they're being recorded, and the agent let them know that that could potentially cause concerns for buyers if they're walking through the house. The sellers didn't care. They said that would be perfectly fine, and they also required proof of identity for before any showing with a government-issued ID or a third-party identification. Needless to say, that is probably not the best way to try to get anybody into the home to take a look, but the listing agent complied and allowed them to do so. She had some concerns about fair housing violations being done if they were gonna not allow anybody into the home, but they complied, let everybody look at the property, everything was good to go. She got them an offer right away for top dollar, and instead of being excited about it, they asked if they should hold out even longer and wait for more offers by letting it sit on the market longer. The agent explained, hey, guess what? I understand that logic, but if you let your house sit on the market too long, you lose interest, you don't gain more money. So luckily they were able to get the deal done, they're under contract, and they should be closing soon. This next story comes from a listing agent who was going out to put a key in a box at one of his listings. He showed up about 25 minutes before any showings were scheduled, which was supposed to start about 3 o'clock that afternoon, and there was already somebody inside the house. The listing agent asked, hey, are you a real estate agent? The guy was like, yeah, absolutely. He's like, okay, well, how'd you get in the house? Do you have an appointment? And the guy was like, oh yeah, I totally have an appointment, everything's good. Not realizing he was actually speaking to the listing agent. Turns out this guy actually sat outside the house and watched and waited for the seller to leave, saw where she put the key for the listing agent to get it, and then got in there 3 hours before his scheduled time. Now, I know that people are out there trying to hustle and get things done and make sure that they can get their clients in a house, but that's borderline breaking the law, and you really need to be considerate of other people's times and appointments that you have set when you're looking at a house. This next story comes from a listing agent? Wow. This next story comes from a listing agent in Minnesota. He had a house that went live on the market, contemporary 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, nothing special. But over the course of the next couple days, there were 190 in-person showings scheduled for that property. They ended up getting 32 offers on the home and obviously got it sold. But I've never heard of any property ever having that kind of showing experience, with over 100 showings scheduled within the first 24 hours on market. Hey, thanks for checking out this week's video. I really hope you guys are enjoying the content that I'm putting out. If there's anything you ever want to see, let me know in the comments below, and be sure to share these stories with any of your buyer friends so they know our market's not as bad as they might think.